The broadcast of the regular meeting of the Transportation and Public Works Committee will now begin.
Welcome. This is the regularly scheduled Minneapolis Transportation and Public Works Committee. This day, November 18th, 2020. I'm Councilman Reich. I chair the committee, and I will note before we begin for the record that this meeting has remote participation by members of the council and the staff as authorized under Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021 due to the declared local public health emergency. To confirm a quorum, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember Gordon.
Here.
Fletcher.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Palmisano.
Present.
Bender.
Here.
Chair Reich.
Present.
There are 6 members present.
We have a record of a quorum. We'll conduct today's business, of which we have 10 items. But before I go through those items, we have a special acknowledgement and recognition before we start the business of the committee. Public Works Water Treatment and Distribution Director Glenn Garretts is retiring after leading the division for at least 7 years. Between his time at the city of Bloomington and here in Minneapolis, Glenn has 40 years of distinguished public service, bringing safe drinking water to Minnesotans. Under Glenn's leadership, the utility has succeeded in its mission in reliably providing safe, high-quality drinking water while serving as an effective steward of public resources and infrastructure, and is well positioned to continue that mission upon his retirement. Under Glenn's tenure, the Water Division has created a strategic plan, a new vision and mission statement, 5 main strategic areas of focus: customer, partnership, workforce, infrastructure, technology. All these categories have been well put into place. Implemented a strategic asset management program, including utilizing technology and processes to enable data-driven operations and maintenance of the capital investment decisions. Developed a matrix organization structure and added business service group to support and manage the utility enterprise finances. Achieved improvements in employee engagement and work culture, including reviews and consolidation of job titles to create greater workforce flexibility, utilization, and professionalism. Subscribed in the Partnership for Safe Water for Distribution Systems, demonstrating continuous commitment to optimization and ability benchmark performance in relation to other utilities in the region and across America. Some of the major programs begun under his work and leadership include the automated meter infrastructure implementation to provide real-time automated meter reads, enabling better line of sight, geographic water usage, and eventual web portal for customers to monitor their usage patterns. Full rehabilitation of the 95-year-old Friedli filter plant to modernize filter operations and upgrade filter media to granular activated carbon to ensure great tasting water is produced every day, and sustained investment in renewal of distribution and treatment infrastructure. And finally, awards received under Glenn's leadership include in 2014, the Association of Metropolitan Water Agencies Sustainability Management Award for achieving a balance of innovation and successful efforts in areas of economic, social, and environmental endeavors. In 2016, the Diversity and Inclusion Award by the American Water Works Association for demonstrated excellence and leadership in displaying a diverse culture in its employment practices and the delivery of its services. And in this year, U.S. Water Utility Residential Customer Satisfaction Survey and J.D. Power ranked the city of Minneapolis highest in the Midwest cities based on customer satisfaction. That's a lot of hardware, and I believe the accomplishments are quite significant. We are, in fact, and without dispute, the envy of many, many municipalities throughout the country. I could not say enough about Mr. Garrett's leadership and my respect for his professionalism and what he's done for the people of his team and his department. But I will yield the floor to Director Hutchinson, who I believe has a few words for this recognition.
Thank you, Chair Reich. I appreciate this opportunity to publicly recognize Glenn Garrett's, or G squared, as he likes to sign off sometimes, to lead the city's division of water treatment and distribution, or Waterworks, is to lead a team of over 200 professionals that ensure the most basic element of life and safety, the water we drink. Glenn is a quiet leader. He was never one to shine the light on himself. Instead, he chose to work internally to build and support his team of professionals whom he trusted and who I trust to serve this city. He brings a lot of skill to the work, and organizational development is a skill of high order, and it's a commitment. And this, I think, was Glenn's greatest strength, and it's his lasting legacy. And it's also where I learned the most from Glenn. So early in my tenure, I was growing into my leadership role in a very large organization, larger than the organization I had led before. Glenn would bring coffees for us both, knowing my favorite kind Americano, 1 inch of steamed soy milk, just, he knows, bring a coffee to my office, and we would talk about how to bring our department closer together. He'd help temper some occasional impatience with the process of team building and change. He'd offer me honest feedback that really helped me grow into my own leadership role. And he supported his colleagues across the division, and they are listening today in order to support him today. For his service to the city, I'm grateful. For his friendship and partnership, I'm grateful. And I want to speak on behalf of the entire team in Public Works. We wish Glenn the best in his retirement. Pretty late in the game, someone had an idea that we should toast Glenn with a glass of Minneapolis tap water. So if you have one handy, I offer this toast to Glenn Garrett. Thank you so much for all of your service.
Coffee made with Minneapolis water.
Excellent. No water, no coffee.
Indeed. Actually, no water, no Northeast beer production either. So it's a big deal. Does anyone else wish to make comment from the committee? I think Glenn will be missed in his leadership, but the proof of his leadership is that the foundation of that department is so strong. Glenn will be with us in that sense for some time. See none, I will now go to the consent items, which are items 2 through 9 on our agenda. As I go through them, if a committee member wishes to pull them for further deliberation, actually before I go, I do see Councilmember Johnson in the queue. Do you wish to have the floor? Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't want to let this moment go by without also commenting as well on Glenn. And I was typing to get into the queue as quick as I could, but technology and working remotely. Anyways, Glenn, I just really want to say how much I appreciate all the work together over the years. You've always been just so responsive as a department or division leader, and really interested in addressing any sort of concerns from residents that we've had here or there. But overall, I also think as well that, the fact that the water department is a division that we do not hear a lot about just really speaks to the leadership and the work that you all do, that it is really well run and that we don't have many complaints. It's very infrequent that people have concerns. I can count on one hand probably over the years, and you've been really great about addressing those. And it is one of those things where it's easy to forget when it works so well, and we just have reliably great water, which is essential to survival. You make it look easy, And you know, it's because of your leadership and commitment and dedication of you and your team that we have the best water in the nation. And so we just are very thankful for all of your work and really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And best wishes and everything with retirement.
You're muted, sir.
Cam, did you want to speak at this item, or was that a note for something later?
That's really for later, but since I have your attention, cheers and best of luck going forward. Thank you so much for all your service.
Well done. Thank you. Okay, well, with that, I will go down the consent items, and I will note, Cam, we will let you have the floor when we get to item 10 later in the agenda. So item 2 is the Grand Avenue South street reconstruction project and the actions required to move forward with that. And we will set the public hearing for January 20th, 2021. Second is the Brooklyn Boulevard reconstruction project, cooperative agreement with Brooklyn Center. Move forward with that project and the agreements and partnerships therein. 4 is there's a series of actions with that, 1 and 2. And I think there's a dollar amount listed. The contract amendment is item 5 with Lunda Construction Company for the 10th Avenue Southeast River Bridge Rehabilitation Project. Amounts listed. The amounts might seem large, but it's commensurate with the size of the project. 6 is the temporary easement agreement with PCI Roads Incorporated for temporary access and use of the Central City Storm Tunnel. 7 is the grant application to the Minnesota Department of Transportation for Clean Transportation Pilot Program. 8 is the capital project closeouts with appropriation, bond reallocation, and revenue adjustments within the city's capital project and enterprise funds. And 9 is the bid for concrete sidewalks, curb, and driveway approaches project. Amounts listed and awards granted. Any further discussion on these items? Seeing none, I will move them as submitted and ask the clerk to call the roll to confirm approval.
Councilmember Gordon.
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Palmisano.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye.
Chair Reich.
Aye.
There are 6 ayes.
Those items move forward for full council consideration. We'll now go to the public hearing, which is item 1 on the agenda. And I will yield the floor to our director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have one public hearing today. This is for Johnson Street Northeast. It's for a street reconstruction project for the project approval, assessment, and areaway abandonment. Today, to present information will be Ahmed Omer with the Transportation Engineering and Design Group, and I will turn it to Ahmed now.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I am Ahmed Omer, professional engineer with the Transportation Engineering and Design Division of Public Works. Today, I'm presenting for the public hearing for the Johnson Street Reconstruction Project, City Project number 2326. The proposed project consists of reconstructing half a mile of Johnson Street between 18th Ave to Laurie Ave. Elements to be included as part of the project includes full removal of the existing roadway, new sidewalks, shared use path, ADA compliant ramps, boulevards with trees, new pavement, new curb and gutter, and utility improvements. The total project cost is $6 million. The total street reconstruction assessment for the project is $417,811.61. This is based on the 2021 uniform assessment rates and the influence zone area method. The assessments are payable over a 20-year period. City Council provided layout approval for the project on April 22nd of 2020. Prior to layout approval, city staff conducted numerous outreach activities throughout the planning and design of the project. In advance of today's public hearing, staff hosted a pre-assessment meeting to provide an overview of the project, discuss planned improvements, and answer any questions related to the assessments and process. This meeting was held on November 10th with 5 people attending. Today, Public Works is asking City Council to pass resolutions ordering the work to proceed, adopting the special assessments, authorizing sale of the assessment bonds, and authorizing abandonment and removal of area waste in conflict with the project. That concludes my presentation. I'll stand by for any questions.
Are there any questions per the staff presentation from committee members? Scroll down. Not seen any. I will now open the public hearing. I do have 3 people listed in queue for commentary. I will call them in order. Starting with Mary Hall, please state your name and address for the record. And *6, I believe, allows you to unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Mary Hall.
Please proceed. We can hear you.
I got a couple of letters about proposed costs for the assessments. The letter that came first was about project 2326C, reconstruction project. The second one was the area abandonment and removal construction project. The one had the proposed cost, the parcel at 5808, the other one said 0. These are 2 separate, I'm guessing, as one says 2326C and one says 2326A.
That's a good question. I think staff would be able to respond to that question.
Mr. Chair, would you like us to respond now or hold to the end of the hearing?
You know, I think we can hold to the end of the hearing as long as we keep track of the questions. That's what we typically do.
We're happy to do that. Thank you.
Okay. The property I own has driveway direct to Johnson Street. There is no alley on this block. When they decide to do the construction, I need to know what they're going to do for driveway access. If they need water shut off notices, and if there's sewer problems, what we will do about that. If we're going to get advance notice of these things. I've had problems with sewer backing up before and had to have the main lane cleaned almost every year since I've lived here. My house is almost paid off, and I don't appreciate getting more added to the taxes. The taxes go up each year. As far as the assessment, the note said, 30 days after the adoption of the assessment. So is this meeting being for the adoption of the assessment, or has the assessment already been adopted?
Again, all good questions. I know staff is taking note of them, and what we'll do is we'll take questions from other presenters, including yourself, and we'll respond to them in order, just for efficiency, given this remote format.
Correct. Definitely not happy with assessment on my property.
I hear that loud and clear, and we'll respond to those specific questions, and thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
We will move down the line, and we have Jenna Dombrowski. You may state your name and address for the record and address the committee. *6 should allow you to unmute. Staff, do you know if Jenna's on the line?
Chair Reich, it appears she may not be on the line anymore.
Okay, thank you for that. If she reemerges, we will allow her time to speak. Moving down to the sign-up sheet, Lily Williams Hosbin, please state your name and address for the record. *6 to unmute.
Hi there, thank you for the time today. My name is Lily Williams Hosbine. I'm at 2412 Johnson Street Northeast. This is simply a statement to preserve my right to appeal within the time frame. No other questions.
We will note that reservation of your rights for the record.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I would ask the clerk, is there any indication of others trying to make comment that weren't on the list?
Chair Reich, there is no one else signed in to speak.
All right, I will call out to the universe. Anyone wish to speak? Seeing no indication, I will close the public hearing and then ask staff to respond to the questions presented through testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. To address the first question, city staff will work with property owners in maintaining access and providing advance notice to any impacts to utilities and driveways throughout the corridor. We will have a project website that will update property owners on upcoming work, and we will have a pre-construction meeting prior to construction to go through details related to construction in terms of closures and duration of closures and the like. With regard to the assessment question and the two mailers that were sent out, I'll allow our assessment office to respond.
Mr. Chair, I'll invite Jeff Handelin to respond, and if we are unable to provide the necessary detail, we are happy to follow up individually as long as we can get the correct name and phone number. So if we can try to answer the detailed question today, if we're unable to, we can follow up individually. Jeff, are you on the line?
Yes, thank you, Director Hutchison. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'm Jeff Handelin. I'm a principal professional engineer in the Transportation Engineering Design Division of Public Works. To answer the questions, this public hearing is for the adoption of the street reconstruction assessments at the amounts that were noticed to the property owners. As far as the areaway notices, an areaway is a below-grade extension of the building into the public right-of-way, typically under the sidewalk. The existence of areaways is sometimes unknown. So that's why an areaway notice and public hearing are part of the process to prepare for the possibility of encountering areaways in the course of the project. If actual areaway assessments become needed, a second hearing would also be held.
Well, thank you for that clarification. If Mary Hall is still listening, certainly you can contact my office directly with any further questions, and we'll make sure the appropriate staff people get you the answers if we did not satisfy your questions or if you have new ones. And in terms of the staff notifying us today in response to the question in terms of how we'll continue to communicate with access issues, I think I've gotten some good confidence built up with the feedback I've gotten how staff communicated with the 18th Avenue Phase 2 project that recently got the primary part of the project got finished, and I got really good feedback. So whatever was done there, we should repeat that because there was a lot of satisfaction in how that was managed. So, and obviously that expectation will be held in the Johnson project as well, as the testifier stated is a concern. So we've heard our hearing, we've answered the questions, we are open to follow up if there are any more questions. I will entertain any comment or questions from my committee members. And if there are none, I will just comment. I know a lot of work, pre-work went into the layout of this project. It's a major street and community connector. It's an access point to a freeway. It's an access point to a major, probably the city's largest shopping center area. And it goes right through a big part of the residential and small commercial part of my ward. And so a lot of, and home to one of our high frequency bus routes for a lot going on. One of the things that I've dealt with ever since I've been in office is one of the things that are going on in that street is a lot of errant and unsafe traffic behavior, and a clear call from the community to address the safety issues and to get a better, calmer, more multifunctional street in place. To that end, I would say the staff really did yeoman's work implementing not only to address those goals, but I think reflecting many of our complete street criteria as a really good example of how that gets implemented in the real world. I would also say that staff put in extra hours to smooth out conflict points, certainly around the small local business commercial nodes, vis-a-vis parking, safety, different modal users, and all those things that oftentimes can be in conflict. But good planning and good communication may not make 100% of each position happy, but it certainly smooths it into a thing where you can really see how it was fashioned with all points of view and considerations in mind. And I call that out just because I just know how much extra work the staff did. And I think it really bore out in the design. So I just wanted to call that out because it was above and beyond. So with that, for my committee members, I'm happy to approve this and would call the move approval and call the roll to confirm.
Councilmember Gordon?
Aye.
Fletcher?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Palmisano?
Aye.
Bender?
Aye.
Chair Reich?
Aye.
There are 6 ayes.
That we move that forward, and we can now go to the final item, discussion item number 10, which just happens to be a real big deal. It's the presentation of our draft transit advisory plan. And with that, I'll give the floor to our director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, for the opportunity to introduce this item. And I want to start by explaining that this plan before you today was created largely in-house, meaning across multiple divisions within the department, across multiple departments within the city, and together with numerous of our external partners. I say this because it's noteworthy. Many cities choose to move more quickly and hire a single external consultant to do the work. And we, on purpose, wanted to make this a homegrown effort. And by doing that, we created a collaborative environment whereby so many people had a hand in shaping this, and now we are ready to implement more quickly. So the first thing I just want to say before I have Kathleen present to you is thank you to everyone who led a chapter, all of our planners who put so much work into this. You set aside a lot of other work to get this done, and you should be really proud of what you see here today. It's your work. You should be very proud. To our steering committee, this included division directors. This included partners from other departments. You made this doable and ready, implementable, maintainable, coordinated. Thank you for the time that you spent. To all of our stakeholder groups and contributors from the public, everyone who took the time to comment, I hope you can hear your voices in here. They're in there. We took great care with your ideas and with your constructive feedback, and it was constructive feedback, and it was really positive. Thank you. I also want to say thank you so much to our policymakers, our council members, to the mayor and his staff. All of you actively participated in the development of this plan. Some of you participated on a policy committee and you provided your guidance and assistance throughout the plan's development. And I have said this before, but bold ideas don't live without your leadership. So thank you. I'm sorry to whoever I forgot to say it was such a big effort across so many divisions, departments, external agencies, stakeholder groups, just to everyone who helped shape this. You did a great job. I also want to mention too in my introduction is a lot has changed since we first presented this draft, and so much has come to light. and we're learning. This summer, we took a pause. We took extra time for reflection. We read the draft plan again. We reached back out to communities and we invited more discussion. And we reflected on how our plan addresses the historic inequities created by past decisions in our transportation infrastructure. And we rewrote some things and we added some things. We took the time to update the plan to strengthen our commitment to racial equity and racial justice with the tools that we have in our transportation action plan. I also want to mention that this is a plan that is a commitment to climate. Nearly every one of the actions that you read in here, you can trace back to the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, the creation of new opportunities for access, and the transformation of our rights of way as places for people. This is a milestone for us as Public Works and as a city, and it really begins our work together. It comes at a hopeful time. It also comes at a challenging time for the city. We have in this version noted actions on a time horizon, some of them sooner rather than later, 0 to 3 years and beyond. We intend to move as quickly as we can. However, we know that we may be challenged this year with our budget scenarios for the city. We will be looking for as many opportunities as possible, and we may at times need to consider 2022 or 2023 for an action that we may have wanted to do in 2021. We're going to do our very best to move this forward on the fastest timeline possible because we don't want to wait on climate and we don't want to wait on equity. So with that, I will now introduce Kathleen Mayall, Supervising Transportation Planner and Project Lead for the Transportation Action Plan. I want to thank Kathleen for leading this very large team and for being so committed to bringing forward the boldest 10-year action plan possible. So with that, Kathleen, please take it away.
Good afternoon, committee chair and council members. I'm Kathleen Mayall, Supervisor Transportation Planner in the Transportation Planning and Programming Division of Public Works. Thank you, Director Hutchison, for that overview and acknowledgement of all the people that have helped bring this plan together. It is such an act of so many voices, and so I'm honored and a bit humbled to be the one presenting to all of you the final plan for consideration. And I'm very excited about it as well. Next slide, please. Today, let's go over 3 different items: our timeline and the engagement, what we heard since I last came to this committee in March, what changes we made from the draft to this final plan, and a quick update on some related efforts to the Transportation Action Plan. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So we came on March 9th to release the draft plan with an initial comment period of 45 days. During that time, COVID changed so much of what we did as professionals, as people, as the way people moved around our city. And we extended our comment period for 30 days based on COVID. That ended May 22nd. A few days later, on May 25th, George Floyd died. And we, as Director Hutchison mentioned, the combination of where we were at with COVID, where we were at as a city and as a staff, looking at how this plan could really respond and be even better in light of the different multiple crises that our city was experiencing. We really wanted to ensure that we were taking a moment to make this plan be all that it could be to advance the original goals of this plan, one of which is equity and climate and how we're taking a deeper look. So we did take a little bit longer to make adjustments, relook at our plan, and as you'll note when I go through the changes to the plan, it's reflected in this final plan. In August, we held additional conversations based on equity with a number of different community organizations, which I'll share a bit about in a few slides. Wrapped up our policy advisory committee and our interagency technical advisory committee, both of those committees being multi-year efforts in October, and then bringing the plan forward today. The plan's available online. There is an interactive website, a PDF which people can download, as well as a PDF which shows changes between the draft and this version that is available today. Next slide, please. Quickly, I'll report a bit on phase 3 engagement, which was what has happened between March 9th and now. And just a reminder that this is rooted within our Minneapolis 2040 efforts and multiple earlier phases of engagement around the Transportation Action Plan. Next slide, please. During our comment period, we heard from a lot of people, a lot of very thoughtful comments. We were able to have one open house that first week when we released the draft Transportation Action Plan in person, and then we transferred everything online. One of our online open houses, we had over 200 people attend, so there was quite a bit of engagement around the plan. We overall received over 1,700 comments, over 150 unique commenters on the website, and 400 emails. So we were able to connect with quite a bit of people during these summer months. Next slide, please. We have summarized all the feedback that we heard through those comments in phase 3 summary engagement. There's a couple pages of overview and 1 page per topic area, introducing the major themes that we heard during the public comment period, and then whether or not we adjusted anything in the plan and why or why not we did adjust something. So that is all available online in our engagement process section of our website. Next slide, please. Overall, what we heard from all of these comments, there was really broad support for the plan. That included the overarching vision, the strategies, the mode shift goal, the focus on climate and equity and safety. So there was a lot of support. It wasn't universal, but broadly there was a lot of support. There were, however, lots and lots of comments about specific things within the plan, be it a corridor or an action or a word choice to strengthen or further clarify something. A couple of the themes that we did hear were looking and really emphasizing those lower cost, quick changes on our streets to make changes and improvements now to what we see out on our streets. There was a lot of comments around winter maintenance, so really exploring our city-led or committing to our city-led snow and ice of sidewalks and additional clearing on our bikeways. There was a lot of urgency expressed for trying to build the all ages and abilities bicycle network as soon as possible. A lot of comments around real and perceived transit safety and security issues, support for free and reduced transit fares, a lot of support for our mobility hubs work, car sharing, shared mobility, and prioritizing those shared vehicles. There was a lot of support looking at trying to reduce impacts of large vehicles within the city, particularly on our modal priority networks. Desire to see changes in our 4-lane undivided streets, and also influencing the design and operations of streets within the city that are not owned by the city, but county and state-owned streets. And a real desire to continue prioritizing space for walking, biking, and transit, as well as for safety, and then for different treatments that would advance our climate goals. Next slide, please. There were 2 email campaigns organized by both the Sierra Club and Our Streets, which generated a lot of comments. I've summarized the main points of those different campaigns here. Sierra Club pushing to look for carbon neutrality by 2050, talking again to the county and state streets, supportive of our transit actions, but pushing for 5-minute wait times for high frequency as opposed to 10 in the plan, support for the mode shift goal and encouraging going farther, prioritizing winter maintenance and clearing the pedestrian priority network, support again for that all ages and abilities network quickly, a piece on salt usage and ensuring we're following best practices and minimizing salt usage as possible, support for our walking actions, and then the Our Streets email campaign focused on taking enforcement out of the plan and using design to achieve the safety measures that we are looking for within the plan. If you can forward the slide, please. In August, we held 9 different community conversations with different organizations that represent our work with BIPOC communities in Minneapolis. And want to note that this was staff-driven and really reflects a deep commitment by our team to look deep at what we were doing and ensure that what we had in our plan was both reflective of things that we were hearing in the community and, again, kind of putting forth actions and strategies that did the most within our transportation network to advance equity for all people and equitable outcomes. So we were able to leverage our partnership with our American Cities Climate Challenge and partner with staff at Nelson Nygaard, who are national experts in transportation equity, to kind of help us develop and craft this engagement and some of the review of our work. And so we talked through 2 different questions in these conversations. And one was, what does racial equity in transportation mean to you or your organization? Major themes we heard from there were around frequent, reliable, convenient transit, lower fares or free transit, solutions for the unbanked customers when it comes to transit, a transportation system where users feel safe, access to jobs and housing, and then noting those high costs of car ownership and looking for ways to reduce that. The second, we also wanted to talk about engagement and how we should be engaging around transportation as one of those key pieces which bring people into the process, and then what people need from the system is able to be reflected in the projects and policies. So key things we heard here were about establishing feedback loops with the community, that we tailor our engagement, that we use age and audience appropriate tools, and that we look to develop and use community-based metrics on transportation projects. So these conversations really helped influence some of the changes as well in our plan, in particular in our progress section, which I'll share, and a summary of these conversations can also be found online. Next slide, please. I just want to be put the slide up here in transparency and some of the larger asks that were not adjusted through our actions, and just explain how we did address them. So carbon neutrality by 2050, right now we are following the Climate Action Plan in Minneapolis' 2040, 80% reduction by 2050. We note in the narrative that we will certainly follow other city policies around that, and we anticipate that this will, our goals will come closer to this as time moves on. The 5-minute high frequency transit goal, again in the narrative, talked to how we are aiming to get there, and a realistic 10-year vision of getting to a 10-minute high frequency transit goal felt adequate at this point. Related to enforcement, we took a dive through the whole plan again and called out where enforcement is, and feel strongly that where we do reference enforcement, it is administrative in nature, around like sidewalk clearing or transit stop clearing, or it's about automated enforcements for keeping bus lanes clear from parked vehicles, and not about that officer interaction piece. The commitment to snow and ice removal by the city, we did add an action, a couple actions talking to our winter maintenance, the study of winter maintenance for pedestrians and bicyclists, and redoing that on a 2-year cycle, and looking in particular at evaluating city-led snow and ice removal, but we did not commit to it. And then adding all schools as connections on our AAA network and our pedestrian priority network. We added some to the methodology about how those were a crucial part of how we developed those networks, and the connections there are along largely residential streets between schools and those networks. And then finally, we did not increase our mode shift goal to more than 3 of 5 trips taken by non-motorized means, but appreciated the sentiment from the comments and are excited to get to 3 out of 5 within 10 years. Next slide, please. To get into some of the changes to the plan, next slide, please. As Director Hutchinson mentioned in her opening remarks, we added to our equity goal and really articulated that we acknowledge and reverse historic inequities in our transportation system as a goal of all the work that we do. Next slide, please. We did not eliminate any actions from our review and update between the draft and final, or anticipated final. We did add a strategy within our walking topic area to expand walking education and encouragement. This is a partner to what is in our bicycle topic area. And we added 23 new actions across all the topic areas. And again, in that red line version online, it points out where those new actions live within the document. Next slide, please. We clarified other actions, added details to articulate other streets, say on a transit actions. There's a number of different changes throughout that also reflect all the public comment that we heard to date. There's some changing from support to do within our actions, more appropriate. That's something maybe we had identified incorrectly or from a partner agency feedback. Similarly, changing occasionally the level of difficulty or the supporting goals, and in particular with the goals linking back better to our equity and climate goals. Next slide, please. This is one of the bigger changes from what you saw in March. In our progress section, we added 3 new strategies, and we really did this, again, reflecting that internal looking and external communication and the public feedback we heard in this moment in time in Minneapolis about how we are intentionally addressing racial equity and racial justice within the plan. So there are 3 strategies. One is on creating and implementing a racial equity framework for transportation, which would build off the work of the Strategic Racial Equity Action Plan, as well as the work of the 20-year Streets Funding Plan. The second is around engagement and stated here, building trust and achieving greater outcomes through equitable engagement. You can see some of the themes related to the community conversations we had in this one. And third, create transparent and accountable measures for evaluation of plans, programs, and projects. So again, that feedback cycle and ensuring what we set out to do is achieving what we are hoping. So there are 20 new actions throughout that. And again, those are noted in the plan. Next slide, please. There were detailed changes to our pedestrian priority network, our all ages and abilities network, and our transit priority project map, reflecting our partner agency comments, public comment. And so I think that we'll find these new updated networks really reflect a lot of what we heard, and not major additions, no huge new corridors, but more tweaks to kind of fill in gaps or connect over better to bridges over highways, that type of thing. And the transit priority project was looking at adding at Glenwood, and that could have been viewed as a technical mistake on our end. There's also been a lot changing in that corridor with Bottineau and the C line and whether that stays in Olson Memorial or Glenwood. So that's called out as the new transit priority project on that map. Next slide, please. There are new narratives woven throughout the Transportation Action Plan, focused on really strengthening those ties between our work and being more intentional in how that relates to racial justice, equity, climate goals. And in particular, the foreword is a new piece, which is a few pages long and talks through kind of where we are right now and what we did over the summer and how changes in the plan reflect this, where Minneapolis is right now and where we hope to take that energy through our transportation work and reach our goals. Next slide, please. As Director Hutchinson noted as well, we have added timelines for all of our action items, and many of those are noted as ongoing, noting either a change in direction or something we will continually do over time. Next slide, please. And last, next slide, please. 3 of the major initial pieces of work that we're doing out of this Transportation Action Plan, we've been simultaneously working on as well. The first, to update our city's complete streets policy, which is the first strategy in our street operations topic, we are actively working on right now, and we anticipate an early 2021 update to that policy. We also call out in the Transportation Action Plan to adopt a strong curbside management policy. We have been internally doing workshops, cross-departmental even workshops on this, and we will be anticipating a policy or draft policy in the middle of 2021. And finally, the street design guide, which will replace our street and sidewalk design guidelines from Access Minneapolis. We are anticipating bringing that through as a receive and file in January of next year. And that will really serve as a huge companion piece to the Transportation Action Plan in terms of how our streets look and feel and are experienced as we continue to make investments and changes throughout our streets. That, next slide, please. That's, excuse me, that's the end here. I'm happy to answer any questions on changes or overall Transportation Action Plan. Thank you for your time.
Any questions for staff per the presentation? Councilmember Johnson, is that you or is that from before?
No, that's me, Mr. Chair. So,
please.
Thank you. Yes, I appreciate the presentation. Thank you for your work on this. I'm curious if you could speak to the questions around really parking and how that plays in here. Obviously, we have a whole parking division within Public Works. I don't think parking was necessarily all that reflected in the Transportation Action Plan. So I'm curious around that and kind of the thinking there. And then as well, any room for strategy around car-free streets. And then I'll just note that I saw Councilmember Gordon has a motion. I'll be putting one in the chat as well.
Thank you for that question, Councilmember Johnson. Chair Reich, I'm trying to pull up right now. We did add a action around parking, and I'm just pulling it up right now. It's in our street operations section, and it speaks to, I'll read it off here. Manage off-street parking supply, demand, and pricing in downtown. Partner with others in pursuit of city policies, including the reduction of single occupancy vehicle use. So we did hear some comments certainly around parking and in particular the downtown area and the relationships with our mode share goal. And so we've added that action in. In terms of parking, we also, a lot of the work of our curbside management policy and our strategy around curbside management addresses how that space is used. And so it's not, as well as our complete streets policy. So it's more, I'd say holistically throughout the plan, parking is a part of the puzzle. And so there's not a lot of specific actions called out around parking in particular, but how do we best utilize our curb to reach our overall city goals and mode share goal and climate and equity goals and safety goals. So it's a bit more integrated, but there is that one new action to call out. And then the second part of your question.
Oh, maybe I'll just quick interrupt you there. And when I'm thinking of this as well, I'm thinking of parking ramps, these really large assets that we have, not just curbside, but specifically around that and just our continued investment and more long-term thinking, since this is a 10-year plan around that. And just any comments on that would be helpful.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Johnson, for the clarification. I think the new action that we did add is about those off-street parking ramps and lots, noting that we are partnering with others, that they are both ours as well as, privately owned facilities. And that we note within that action that we are partnering in how we manage those parking spaces, and structures to reach city policies, including reducing our single occupancy vehicle trips. So that's kind of as far as that action got within the plan.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Johnson, as this is related very closely to work that's done out of the Traffic and Parking Services Division, I will provide some additional context. Parking is a business that relies on supply, demand, and elasticity. And it's an economic proposition, both off-street and on-street, that is more detailed than what a 10-year action plan can outline. What we hope to do with a 10-year action plan is to say that the subsequent detailed management plans for parking will be geared towards reducing single occupant trips and achieving 3 out of 5 every trip not made by car. The detail behind that is completed within the parking services and in that asset management plan that sometimes solely addresses City of Minneapolis assets, but often is addressing a partnership, MnDOT being chief among them, of assets that we manage together. So it is both referred to in this plan, in that action, and you should expect to see over time the way that the more detailed asset management plans are prepared are in line with that action as noted in the 10-year plan.
Thank you.
And if I may, Councilmember Johnson, Committee Chair, we also have an action in our street operations 5.5, which looks to employ on-street and off-street parking strategies to support transit corridors. So there's a number of examples we list there. So one other area where we do address the parking as well.
And Councilmember Johnson, I know you have an amendment that you wish to come forward that you listed, as does Councilmember Gordon. Would it be okay to hear other comments and questions from committee members and address additions to the document at the end?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. And then I guess my, I don't know if it was touched on by staff, but the question around car-free streets and be more prominent with that would be helpful if I could just get some thoughts on that. But absolutely, Mr. Chair, I worked with staff on this amendment, and I'm happy to have it taken up at the end after questions and comments.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson, for the reminder of that additional question. We did amend our car-free streets action, and so before we had an action under Design 2.5 that said explore opportunities for car-free streets. We have amended that to say explore opportunities for car-free streets, implement pilots, and make permanent improvements. So adding a bit more directness, I guess I'll say, rather than just explore, that we explore with the intention of piloting and, assuming what we learn from the pilots to make improvements, permanent improvements. So that is the major place where we address car-free streets within the plan. There is also the neighborhood greenway concept in the plan, which could take a variety of different forms and will be further detailed in our street design guide. But in terms of potential of car-free streets, that's how that was addressed within the plan.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to really appreciate the really high quality of work that we just had presented to us, and offer my gratitude to all of the staff that worked on this and to all of the constituents who took time to comment on this. I can see my constituents' comments that came through my office reflected in this document in some really exciting ways. I think we see modifications that include renewed focus on pedestrian scale lighting, renewed focus on pedestrian safety in freight corridors, all kinds of the conversations that we've been having around how to improve the experience, especially for pedestrians in Ward 3, I think is really reflected here, and I'm excited about that. There's certainly a few things that I think leave us with continued work to do as a council and as a city. I know Councilmember Gordon is working on something around sidewalk clearance and winter maintenance that I think is an important issue. That's something that many people have raised and that I want to continue to raise. I think we didn't make as much of a reflection about pedestrian seating throughout the city, which is one of the things that I heard from a lot of people, is that if we're going to walk around and we're going to get around, in a variety of ways, we need places to sit along the way and to rest and to take a break, and that's part of what enables that. But we are seeing that piloted in the mobility projects and in some of the other things where we're starting to see these things come in, whether they're reflected precisely in the plan or not. And so I think there's tremendous creative work happening in this department. I'm really grateful to the staff who are working on it. I'm not bringing forward any amendments because I really see our work going back to, gosh, like a year and a half ago at a very snowy meeting where we had our first Ward 3 meeting about this in phase 1. And I just really appreciate getting a chance to vote for a plan that I think will make significant improvements for our city. So thank you all for your work.
Good comments. And I would concur. A lot of the constituent input that I see echoed throughout this. So I think that's a really great observation, Councilmember Fletcher. Council President Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Like Councilmember Fletcher, I really just wanted to share my appreciation and enthusiasm for the Transportation Action Plan. Together with Chair Reich, I was able to serve on the advisory committee and have seen a lot of this work evolve over time. As Director Hutchison reflected, I think the really enormous input and effort from our staff in public works and departments across the enterprise, I think really set us up so well for being ready to implement the action steps in this plan. When I think about our city and how we move forward now with so much, so many challenges, I think of the opportunities that we have to do more with what we already invest in our community. And our transportation system, our street network is one of those things where I think with this plan, we're really building on work to use resources really strategically to really center our city's goals and values to shape that funding. We're one of the first cities in the country, if not the first, to use a race equity lens to program our capital infrastructure dollars. And that means a lot. It means that we're not just continuing to put money into the same places that are already have a lot of destinations, already have a lot of foot traffic and car traffic and transit service, but that we're really focusing our efforts to invest in places where access to jobs and schools and recreation is critically important for our race equity goals. And then this is one of the central ways that our city is contributing to the fight against climate change and really aggressively working to meet our greenhouse gas emissions goals. We cannot meet those goals without a change in policy, in budgeting, in behavior. If we want people to change their behavior and choices, we need to change the options and opportunities. So I am really excited about how specific this plan is in the action steps required to meet those race equity and climate change goals, how much breadth of staff expertise has gone into this so that we're ready to go from day one, implementing this plan through everything our public works and capital budget does. And then I think finally, the thing that I am really thrilled to see us do as a city is really step up and put forward our own city-focused transit network plan. Of course, transit is a regional system. We rely a lot on partnerships with other communities, with our counties, within the region, with the Metropolitan Council, Metro Transit, with our legislative leaders across the state to invest in our transportation transit system. But having our own transit plan that really reflects those particularly race equity and access goals that we have is a really important thing for our city and our community to be able to advocate for those priorities to be met instead of reacting to regional priorities, which don't always line up with what's best for access and mobility for folks who live within Minneapolis. So there's a lot of very specific things I could say, but wanted to highlight those pieces today. And thank you, Mr. Chair and the Director and all my colleagues who've contributed to this. This is a really forward-looking plan. This is something to be really proud of. It takes, I think, the best ideas from here in our community and builds off of work that's been happening for a long time. So I think it's, you know, it's really the culmination of many, many years of work from folks in our community brought forward by staff. So I'm really excited and thankful.
Thank you for those comments. Any other comments or questions before we go into consideration of amendments from our colleagues? Not seeing any, and seeing a very eager Councilmember Gordon. Maybe you can have the floor and talk about the amendment, the language of which I think we've all reviewed, and look forward to your discussion.
I appreciate that, but first I want to be clear, my eagerness has to do with how excited and enthusiastic I am about this plan in general. I was looking at it and reading through it and thinking back to where we were when I first took office in 2006, kind of as some starry-eyed Green Party person thinking that we should have protected bikeways everywhere. And I'm amazed. I think that the city has come a long way since then. I mean, all the people of the city of Minneapolis and our expectations and what we want to see our transportation system do for us and with us. And I think that this plan really reflects that. There's some things here that I have to look at twice, and when I read the section about how we are going to identify opportunities and partnerships to design, fund, and construct lids over highways to reconnect neighborhoods, I am thoroughly excited and thrilled to see that. And it also sometimes makes me wonder if I'm not dreaming, but I'm not. I mean, this is real, and that's just an example of things that I think people can hook onto and can see in this plan that they might want to build on. We also say we want a new river crossing for the Midtown Greenway and Great Northern Greenways. So that is, I think, what people are wanting. If we set our mind on these, we can accomplish them. I really encourage people throughout the city to look at this plan. There are so many concrete ideas and steps tied so clearly to such worthy goals and outcomes, focusing on climate change, equity, and safety, which I think everybody wants to see. And here we are prioritizing those things in our transportation action plan. I think it's so massive and detailed. It's going to be hard to accomplish unless we have enthusiastic support and groups and people throughout the city willing to champion those things that they really want to see take place. And I don't even want to diminish the reopening Nicollet Avenue at Lake Street is another one that's there, which has been a long time in coming and hopefully an accomplishment that we can attain. Now, with that said, I just want to turn our attention to one small, it's almost a peeve, more than a really big, ginormous concern, if that's a real word. And it has to do with one of the, and I'll just go back so that I can read it. It has to do with one of the action steps. And this actually was grown from lots of conversation that we've had about winter snow clearance in this committee ourselves and also out in the community. And one thing that I noticed was missing was us calling out working on a pedestrian priority network. And so I want to add a section. It's not a full sentence, it's a clause to action 4.10 of the Transportation Action Plan, which says we will conduct review of pedestrian and bicycle winter maintenance study on a biennial basis to evaluate and suggest changes to city-led snow and ice clearing. And I want to add this, as you can see on your screen, that will include the clause, including evaluating city-led clearing of snow and ice on the pedestrian priority network. I had the opportunity to be influenced effectively by our city staff who have worked most closely on the action plan, and I believe that this language is acceptable and in keeping with what we want to accomplish anyway, but I also think it might help to push us a little further and reassure our community that we still are going to be working hard to figure out how we can make sure that our sidewalks are more accessible to everybody all year long. So.
I definitely appreciate the commentary. And Councilor Gordon, did I hear a motion to amend?
Let's make that a motion. Yes, thank you.
On Gordon's motion to amend, is there any further discussion? I don't see any, but I will comment that, yeah, appreciate the work that you did to highlight this. I think it's reflective of the attention put on this subcategory of a larger plan. And yeah, any further discussion? If not, if the clerk will call the roll on this amendment.
Councilmember Gordon.
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Palmisano.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye.
Chair Reich.
Aye.
There are 6 ayes.
With that, I will now go to Councilmember Johnson, who also has an amendment and language before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we'll see if the language is put on the screen. I know I put it in the chat a minute ago. Let me get my camera on here. Sorry, I'm moving around my background, so this might not look as good. Me on the screen as it did before. It's a recreational hazard now of working remotely with a child at home. Anyways, I'm bringing forward this amendment. I'd like to move this just in discussing around the ADA transition plan. I know it is mentioned in the document in the Transportation Action Plan, and it references the ADA transition plan as a living document, but we would like to see a little more frequent review and evaluation of this. I know that's consistent with comments that have been made by this committee when we were reviewing that ADA transition plan. And so in that spirit, working with staff, I'm bringing forward this language, which I think will get at the spirit of that, of just having a little more frequent evaluation of the progress and consideration of the ADA transition plan and any updates to improve compliance. And so happy to move that. And then actually after we vote on it, I do have one more question and then a comment related to the Transportation Action Plan.
Okay, so we have moved a second amendment. Language is before us. I think it's an appropriate highlight with some specificity around that in our general plan. And if there's no further discussion, I will have the clerk call the roll on Councilmember Johnson's amendment.
Councilmember Gordon.
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Palmisano.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye.
Chair Reich.
Aye.
There are 6 ayes.
Very good. I'm not aware of any other additional comments or adjustments to the overall plan. Oh, Councilmember Johnson, are you in queue again?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a question and then a comment, just a clarifying question for staff. Under the 51 miles of neighborhood greenways, is the intent for that to be full greenways, as in very park-like greenways without motor vehicles on them?
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson, for the question. Chair Reich. The intent, no, it's not specifically that they're car-free greenways. The greenways is could look like a reduced space for vehicular car traffic and increased space, so it could have some park-like elements. But those design details will, one, be further articulated in the street design guide, and will also be through the engagement we do on a capital project would be developed with the community in terms of what best fits. But the idea is that there's a spirit of a greenway within those 51 miles, meaning, a comfortable place where it's very low stress for people to bike and walk throughout the community, and something different than what we have seen to date in terms of how our streets have been constructed.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification. And personally, I'm interested in seeing us get to full greenways as quickly as possible, or as many of them, because they're such tremendous assets. And then finally, Mr. Chair, just a comment on this. I want to echo colleagues who've said that there's just so many great elements to this. I really appreciate all the work that has gone into this. I will note, I was briefed on it, I think this week. I know it posted out on the city website as well just the other day. And so for those that are watching and following this, if you feel like, hey, we haven't had a ton of time to react yet to it, I'm just going to throw this out there that, we have a ward week next week for Thanksgiving, and then we'll have this up at the full council on the 4th. And so, as people are looking at this, if they do see any other opportunities around areas where little tweaks could get it to an even better place, please let us know as your council members. I think that's, what we're here to do is to listen to that feedback and consider it in the context of this plan. And again, it's got a lot of great stuff in it, and really appreciate all the work in it. And we'll continue to consider if there are any other tweaks or opportunities in between now and that full council meeting. So thank you for everybody for all your work and involvement in this.
Very good points. And also certain deeper work that we can anticipate in the subsequent supporting plans as staff has described in terms of curbside management, complete streets, etc. So ongoing opportunity. So point well made, Councilmember Johnson. Any other commentary? And seeing none, I will just make a comment. So much has been said that I completely concur with from my colleagues. I would say the broader description in the preamble by the Director Hutchinson, I think really sets the tone for what this plan is. It's certainly beyond just an action plan that discusses multimodal project priorities. It just goes beyond that. I think Councilmember Gordon said it correctly. This is a ginormous plan with large goals. I'm not sure if ginormous, the portmanteau has been accepted by the OED, but it certainly does capture, I think, the breadth of what we have before us and the importance of it, as Council President Bender really dug into what this means for our community beyond just its technical topic area. Director Hutchinson said, you can read throughout this, this is how we will deliver our goals around environment. This is how we'll deliver many of our goals that will be materially felt in terms of equity in our focus in communities where we should be focusing by the direction of citywide policies and how they'll be met in visible and real ways, life-changing ways if done completely and moving forward. I just can't underestimate that. And I would even add on one other thing and highlight. This isn't just, again, a plan for how we move around as a city, and it certainly supports environment and equity. This really sets forth that our open spaces, of which Director Hutchinson has reminded us is almost a quarter of the whole city's built form, this is who we will be as a city. This is our community. These are our common areas, that which is most public, and therefore most reflective of what makes Minneapolis, Minneapolis. And I think if we do it right and we realize many of these goals, it will reflect most directly on who we are as a city in ways that I think it's hard for anything a municipality has in its power to do to make visible and real in people's lives. This is that roadmap. And I will also comment that this has a lot of reach element. Council President Bender rightly said this is a very forward-looking plan. However, forward-looking as it is and how strong the reach elements of the goals are, it's still a plan of expectations to deliver. And I think that's very reflective of the values of the leadership of the department, the people who work to implement within the department. They don't want to have plans that they can't deliver. They see a plan, they want to deliver it. And I think the decade moving forward will be about a story of delivering on this plan, as aggressive as it is. So with that, I believe we have before us, I will move a motion to approve the Transit Action Plan for full council consideration. Any further discussion from the committee? If not, I would have the clerk confirm approval in advancement to full council.
Councilmember Gordon,
Aye.
Fletcher,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Palmisano,
Aye.
Bender,
Aye.
Chair Reich.
Aye.
There are 6 ayes.
That carries. And that concludes the business that we had before us today. And if there's no objection, we will be adjourned. Thank you, everybody.